And welcome back. So, yesterday I uploaded a couple of videos. Most of you have not seen those videos, they're very short. And one is called The Largest Smack-Scene Needle in the World, and the other one is called The Second Largest Smack-Scene Needle in the World. And really, both of those videos need to go viral. Now, I've identified some kind of disconnect between our live shows and videos that I just upload and publish. For some reason, the videos that are just uploaded and published are not seen by most of you guys. Our live shows hit like 10, 12,000, 15,000 views, but for some reason, those shorter videos sit at 3, 4, 5,000 views. So something is wrong. Now, I don't know if they're not coming up in your guys' feed or what, but just take note of that. Make sure that you keep an eye out, because I am uploading other videos outside of the live shows, and they should come up in your feed or something. So I don't know what's really going on with that. But let's get back into this, because, you know, I wasn't planning on doing a really an in-depth show today, in terms of like, I was just going to try to relax. But all this new stuff has come to light that literally blew my mind. And what we have here is some strange phenomenon happening, in which the landscape built around these cities and the cities themselves are basically symbolizing the future plans that they have for the world. Now, the reason why these videos need to go viral is because these are the kinds of videos that wake people up. But these are also the kinds of videos that I sometimes get accused of stretching. And you guys have all seen the comments, hey, that's a stretch, that's a stretch. It usually always starts out with, I'm a long-term subscriber, but this one is a stretch. And it's the same format of the comment every single time. Now, I'm going to put all that to rest, because understand this, these are the same people that are the ones that are accusing me of stretching the findings against Thump, for instance, in which we identified before even the lockdown began, from the smack scene spam-demic, that we would be betrayed and that this would never end. And it wasn't just about the first 2 weeks. And these are the same people that accused us of stretching the snake bite findings in I Am Legend and countless other decodes that we did before the smack scene was ever made. We had identified the crown serpent. Or these are the same people that were criticizing us and stretching and saying that we were stretching things about the crossing eclipses that happened several years ago, which signaled the exodus, the coming mass exodus of America out of Egypt to the states that are more aligned with the Most High. And we're seeing it all happen right now. And that was linked into the toxic Operation Cherry Blossom, the eclipse balloons launched over America during the Apollo ritual, which would signal the coming of the worldwide spam-demic. And that connected into Operation Sea Spray. Again, all of this covered before the spam-demic. We covered it a year before, in which we documented our own American Navy poisoning the people of San Francisco by dropping this reddish pathogen onto them that they knew was toxic. So a lot of stuff that we were accused of stretching has happened, hasn't it? And this is just some of the things, like the rise of copper. Remember, we were talking about copper. Oh, that's a stretch too. And I said this will be needed for the Jive G infrastructure. And what has happened to copper in the last 4 years? It's doubled in price. We had coin shortages and everything else. Or how about those rabies zombie videos that we did long before people started exhibiting this epidemic of mass hair loss and balding, which is, of course, the first sign that somebody is infected with rabies. Now, I could go on, but remember, all of the things that we covered that in the beginning sounded like a stretch, but later proved to be eerily accurate. Now understand that these are not my ramblings and visions. These are spiritual inspirations. In fact, I try to take myself out of the equation when I'm trying to listen to the Most High and listening to, what's happening in the comment section, in the chat, and seeing the synchronicities. I try to remove myself from that equation and let the Most High try to, put all this together. And the bottleneck is me, a human being. But somehow, God works through me and we get it done. He works through all of us, doesn't he? As we're trying to warn people about the devil's devices. Because that's what this is really all about, isn't it? Warning people of the agenda of the devil to come so that we can run the other way and warn as many other people as possible. Now, we had already identified that needles atop towers and buildings were basically the harbingers of the shape of things to come, which was worldwide smack the nation, wasn't it? And even that little play on words that we had to use meant something later, didn't it? When Will Smith smacked Chris Rock. So why wouldn't there be an outline of a syringe built right into the landscape around the structures that clearly were already symbolizing a hypodermic needle in plain sight? Now, you'll see what we're talking about when we start to break these things down. The Space Needle in Seattle. We're going to look at the New Year's Eve light show for 2021 and 2022. As well as the One World Freedom Tower in Manhattan, which is what you're looking at right now on your screen. So, here is the needle of the Freedom Tower. It's actually called that. And the one in Seattle is an offset tip syringe, which you're seeing at the bottom of your screen on the left. Now, let's break down the Manhattan syringe, the Freedom Tower, and talk about what it means. And this is kind of where it began, or this is the focal point or central point of the sorcery here. Because really, this Freedom Tower represented the two slim towers, didn't it? Combined into one in the shape of a sulfur molecule. The S8 sulfur molecule, to be exact. They both share the same anti-prism shape. And atop it, the needle of the tower stands 888 plus 888 feet for a total of 1,776 feet, which I believe represented the former two 8-sided towers smashed into one, because the original ones were 8-sided, weren't they? Now, both towers had 99 elevators, and they were 110 stories tall. 110 and 110 is 220, you guys. The year of Vidco 19, wasn't it? So, we have the two buildings mixed together, smashed into one, into an anti-prism above and below, hell and earth. And this infers all kinds of things. It infers the two sexes becoming one. It infers the two sides of government becoming one. Or you could even make the argument, humanity being one with the serpent. Now, the book of Daniel says, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. It talks about steel and miry clay. Steel, needles, miry clay, human flesh. Now, understand that sulfur on the periodic table of elements is just right next to another element called Lucifer. Phosphorus is called Lucifer, and it's right next to sulfur on the periodic table. And maybe I'm thinking, is this why God used phosphorus to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? Because it was the neighboring element from Lucifer. You know, punishment always fits the crime with the Most High. This is how you can figure out what he was really talking about when that person was punished, because you look at the punishment and you see that it fits the crime. For Eve, it was childbearing, wasn't it? Birth pangs. Now let's keep going with this, because I want you to notice all the other buildings in the path of the needle that seem to have needle-like tips as we follow the path. There's one there. Let's zoom this up so you can see this. Let's follow the path of needles. There's another one there. Let's keep going. Are there any more? The path of needles. Now, let's keep going. Because as this needle emerged spiritually out of the landscape, I asked myself, so what's inside the needle? Well, we already know about all the stuff that we've talked about, the blue bloods, don't we? And we've been saying that before it was ever even made, before it ever came to market. We were talking about the blue bloods. So then my eyes were directed to our particular reservoir inside Central Park. This is called, let's go back here, Jackie Kennedy Onassis Reservoir. Now, before we talk about that, understand that there is a Cleopatra's Needle, another needle. It's somewhere in this area, very close to Jackie Kennedy Onassis Reservoir. And this is what it says on Cleopatra's Needle, which is an obelisk, by the way, but they call it a needle. The obelisk was erected first at the Heliopolis, Egypt, in 1600 BC. It was removed to Alexandria in 12 BC by the Romans. Presented by the Khedive of Egypt to the city of New York, it was created here, or erected here, on February 22nd, 1881. By way of Vanderbilt. Here's the needle here. Here you see what appears to be are those cherry blossoms. Another clue about cherry blossoms basically mean disease and spamdemic. Operation Cherry Blossom was a plot that was uncovered during WW2 in which the Japanese were supposedly going to drop plague on America with red balloons floating over the jet stream. It was called Operation Cherry Blossom. And again, we covered that years ago. Now, let's keep going with this, because it's going to go off the rails here. And I wasn't expecting this, but I just kept digging and researching. And this is what I found next. So my eyes were directed toward this reservoir and the Cleopatra's Needle, again, just yards away from the reservoir, Jackie Kennedy Reservoir. And then I saw all of these pharmaceutical companies within the direct vicinity of this path of the needle. They're all here in this area near the part of the syringe called the ferrule, which sounds like the Pharaoh's rule, doesn't it? Some of these companies have copper top buildings. Novartis, for instance, you're looking at this building. They're on the 21st floor. They don't own the whole building, but here you see the copper top building, which of course copper-based blood, hemocyanin, and all the other pharmaceutical companies placed Bristol-Myers squib, which sounds like squid, which is the Hydra. We're going to get into that later in the show. You see Pfizer, of course, and they're all in this area back here called the ferrule of the syringe. Here's J&J. I think that's some field office. But you also get the players that were involved in all this, which was, of course, Thump. Here's his international hotel located at the ferrule of the syringe as well. The Pharaoh's Rule with his globe. And of course, this was knockoff from Men in Black. You guys, this is loaded. Loaded. And then, of course, Thump Tower, again, located at the ferrule portion of the syringe, very close to these pharmaceutical company headquarters. As you can see here, here's Bristol-Myers squib and all the others we looked at. And then here's Thump Tower. This was all by design. All of them here in a line. He was always meant to build this at warp speed. There was probably pre-planning going on long before anybody knew what was going on. Now, let's back up a little bit, because we're going to go back and focus on this lake, Jackie Kennedy Onassis Reservoir, because I found something unspeakable. This lake used to be Sawkill Marsh. Now, what is Sawkill about? Well, we saw Sawkill, didn't we? Where did we see it? We saw the saw killing people in the Wild Wild West. There was a saw, a circular saw, that was shot out. It had a spider on it, didn't it? And it chased Will Smith through a cornfield. He was standing next to a guy named Artemis. Artemis Gordon. And the circular saw seemed to shave the top of the cornfield like it was shaving a head, didn't it? We are the corn. That is how the elite see us. Now, let's keep following this through, because you can't just have one association. There has to be a theme, right? There has to be a central theme. And I'm going to prove that to you right now, that Sawkill actually means something. So, the saw tip, the saw kill. This is Saw 2, the movie. And many of you will remember the scene in the movie from Saw 2. It was called the Saw Pit. I'm sorry. It was called the Needle Pit. And what they did is, you know, the bad guy in Saw told them, you have to go into this pit of hypodermic needles. You have to jump in and find this key to get you out of the room. This girl is thrown into the pit of needles. She's stuck all over with needles. And there's your saw. Notice it's in copper color. Are you getting chills yet? Because I am. Because what we're discovering here, you guys, is spiritual manifestation of truths that really no one else is seeing. Saw 2. Now, I was going to play that scene for you, but I don't want to catch a copyright. But understand that these hypodermic needles, I don't know when this movie came out, but it came out long before any kind of spam-demic, didn't it? Now, let's keep watching here. Because, to me, this needle pit scene is really the needle tip scene. Tip is pit backwards. Let's go back to this video here. Sawkill. Now, this particular reservoir, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir, and you're probably going to want to sit down for this part. There were many films filmed there. The Devil's Advocate. Was it the Devil's Advocate, or was it the one? Was it a different one? Let me fast forward through this here. There were many presidents who ran on the track that encircled this reservoir. There are the cherry tree mentions that we talked about, Operation Cherry Blossom, around the reservoir. And that, yes, the Devil's Advocate was filmed there. Devil's Advocate was also filmed at Thump Tower, wasn't it? Now, let's back up, because there was a saw in E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Now, I was shocked because a lot of people don't even remember this film. This was the hugest film of my childhood. Everybody bought a copy of E.T. on VHS. This was a very popular film. It made, I think it might have made $1 billion. And it was about a boy who encounters an extraterrestrial. The two become one. The two become one. After Elliot pricks his finger on a sawtooth blade. The sawtooth blade was part of a contraption, a calling device that E.T. had made to call home. And that calling device was made up of an umbrella and a sawtooth. I'm going to put the sound on for this so you can hear this. Now, this video right here that I put up is sitting at like 4,000 views. The word is not getting out, you guys. This is the central theme of everything that we've been working on for the past probably 3 years. Let's keep watching here. All of the components, the umbrella, the sawtooth blade. And you'll remember that it was at that point in the film, those of you that remember E.T., when he pricked his finger and E.T. healed him, that's when they became one. And remember, E.T. got sick and Elliot got sick at the same time. Umbrellas and syringes are the same. They have the same part. The ferrule, which is in the syringe, is a little piece in here, which was near all those pharmaceutical companies on the map, as well as Thump Tower, as well as Thump International Hotel. It's right here on the map. And then there's also the tip of the umbrella is called the same thing, the ferrule. Here's some artwork that was done that's in New York City at bus stops that we covered in previous shows. So they know. Now, let's keep going. Where'd it go? Uh-oh, did I lose my video here? Where did it go? Oh no, sorry guys, I think I just dropped the video. Anyway, we pretty much got through most of that. I have another video here that we're going to look at next. But before we do, we need to finish up all of this. Now, you're going to want to sit down for this part because there's a machine called a Willowing machine. And guess what? This machine has large spikes. Large iron spikes. What is it used for? Pulling the impurities out of cotton. It's a large drum filled with iron spikes. It's a sawtooth, a sawkill, a saw blade. Now, before these Willowing machines were made, or before they were used for cotton, they were actually used to describe the cleaning or picking of wool. And this is where we're going to get into the part of today's show where we're going to solve this whole shaving of the head ritual, because it's about the fleecing of the wool. It's the devil fleecing the wool of God's sheep, fleecing the lamb of God's people, shaving the lamb. Here is one such willowing machine, and as you can see, it has the sawtooth blades, just like the sawkill. It's called a willowing machine. Shaving our heads is tantamount to cutting off our connection to God, detaching you from God. And it all goes back to the original Lamb of God, and we are all his sheep. Now, here's where things went completely off the rails for me this morning. I just discovered this morning, because this lady wrote about willowing of wool. Willowing of wool is an ancient technique where you use 2 willow sticks or some other bendy wood to whip the wool. Get it? Whipping the wool, whipping the sheep. This helps to open up the locks, get air into the wool, and vegetable matter out. An ancient technique. Yule. 5 years ago, I went to the west coast of Sweden together with my wool traveling friend Anna for a 1-week spinning course. The origin of the word, since the technique has been performed with soft sticks, usually willow, it has been called willowing. This word root has remained even after the start of the industrialism, a machine that was designed to open up the locks, remove vegetable matter, and blend the wool, called a willowing machine, which we just covered. It's also called a willy, which brings back memories of Kill Benton. Here's one of the original definitions. Willy, willow, a machine for the preliminary process of beating, picking, and cleaning wool. Angels and devils. I was told that the flying locks used to be called angels. The higher the angels flew, the more air had been let in to the wool, and the better the wool was whipped. And they do look like angels, white, fuzzy, and endlessly beautiful. And another word for the willowing machine was devil. If you have ever seen a willowing machine, or a wool picker for that matter, you will understand. It looks like your average Tudor era torture tool. So, there is no stretching going on, is there? This is supernatural disclosure. Now, this is about all that was said in this blog. I'm going to link this for you guys. I guess we could play a little bit of her willowing the wool. Now, willow and Will Smith and saw blades and shaved heads and alopecia and Artemis and alopecus sitting under the willow tree. It's all starting to make sense, isn't it? Wormwood that cures baldness. It's all coming together. So, that's what I found on that. I don't know what happened to our video, but it's gone. But we were pretty much done anyway. Now, let's keep going, because we're going to now break down the world's second largest needle. And of course, that needle is on the west coast of America. So we did East Coast, now we're going to do West Coast. And of course, that needle has to be Seattle, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Now, Seattle has the world's largest needle problem, doesn't it? And it's one of the capitals of the world for drug use. And do you think really this is an accident? I don't think it is. And I think Gilly Bates knows something, doesn't he? Now, I'm going to back this up a little bit, because people are like, why are you just drawing arbitrary lines? I'm not drawing arbitrary lines. I'm following the outline, the spiritual outline of what I'm seeing here. And as you can see, and I'm sorry I have to be so specific, you guys, but you understand that, you have to address these naysayers, because what it is it's sorcery. So if they start saying, oh, you're just stretching things and making things up, 20 to 30% of the people are going to believe that. Look at these lighter colored roofs here. It forms a line, doesn't it? That's where I drew my line. Look at the delineation of these roofs down here in this line. It forms a line, doesn't it? There is a rectangle here, isn't there? Now, when I say it to you, you see it. But if you don't have spiritual eyes, you're not going to see it. There's also a line here, isn't there? That's different from the lines around it. There's also something back here, isn't there? With these trees here. So all I did, and as you watch me draw the lines, you'll start to see the hypodermic needle emerge. See that? All I did was outline the natural lines that I'm seeing on the screen. Now, I don't know if people are trolling us or what, but just to be sure, we're going to make sure that we show you guys this. See the natural kind of line? I went a little wide there, but for the most part, I got it right. Okay? It's a general outline of something happening in the landscape. And at the tip is the Space Needle in Seattle. What you're looking at is Seattle. Here's the tip of the needle. Now, I was a little puzzled, because I was like, wait a minute, why is the tip off-centered like that? So I looked online, and of course, there is such a thing as an off-centered tip syringe. And I'm going to show that to you in just a second. An off-centered tip. There it is right there. So none of this is stretching. It's simply looking at spiritual manifestations. Okay? Now, that's about all I found for the Space Needle. There it is there. Here you can see the Space Needle. Now, again, we've always known that these needles atop these buildings... Look, there's another needle right there. See that? Just like in Central Park. Let's see if we can slow it down. I don't know what these structures are, but there's one there. Some type of tower. So again, needles in the path, just like in Central Park, the Cleopatra needle, and the other buildings that we saw at the beginning of the show. Here's some more needles up here, all in this area. So, yes, part of this is arbitrary, but most of it is spiritual. And it's a pattern that's repeatable. I just repeated it in Central Park, and I just repeated it in Seattle. Now let's keep going with this, because we've always known that these are basically that these towers are needles. They project needle symbolism, don't they? In fact, if you look at the history of the Space Needle, there was a pharmaceutical company that was involved in creating and building the Space Needle in Seattle. Now, any one of these associations alone isn't going to prove anything. You have to research it, and that's when you begin to put the puzzle pieces together. And then the body of evidence comes forward, and then you realize that there's something much deeper to all this. Now, let me check in with you guys, and we're going to look at the light show from 2021 and 2022 for the Space Needle. And in these light shows, you're going to see the very same elements that we just got done talking about in the light show symbolism. Watch this.
10, 9.
First thing we notice is a Hydra, don't we? Let me make this a little bit bigger for you guys. They might as well put Bristol Myers Squid underneath this caption here. Of course, the DNA. We talked about mixing the two. Metamorphosis, transformation. There's an umbrella like. I'll admit, maybe this one's a little bit arbitrary here. But you saw this go out like an umbrella, kind of, right? Of course, it's a lotus flower. That one I'll say, okay, you could say that. But as we begin to merge through here, you're going to see jellyfish. Which I'm not sure. Are jellyfish hemocyanin-based creatures? I don't know. But by the end of this, it seals the deal. Because what you're going to see last are bald-headed, whatever, aliens, creatures. Merging out of the light show. The fleecing of the wool of the sheep of the Lamb of God. Now, of course, all these look like spike proteins, but that's a little bit of an arbitrary guess as well. And that brings us to the 2022 light show. And I guess these people really love squid. I'm going to turn the sound off here. I guess these people really love squid. Because what you're going to see next is squid, octopus, hydra. 2 separate light shows, a year apart, and they love their octopus, don't they? Now, are you starting to see what's going on here? Now that you see the syringes in the landscape, well, if you're still on the fence, let me seal the deal for you. Syringe is from the root word SYRINX. Who was SYRINX? Are you ready for this? SYRINX was a nymph follower of Artemis. And the reason why we know that the word syrinx is the base word of syringe is because syrinx was turned into hollow reeds, which is exactly what a syringe is. It's a hollow reed. Now, it didn't end there because she got turned into Pan's pipes, which were known as syrinxes. Pan's pipes were known as syrinxes. Now they admit here the word syringe was derived from this word. The word syringe comes from Pan's pipes and Syrinx and Artemis. So do you see how, had I stopped talking about any of this in the beginning, when many people thought it was a stretch, we would have never gotten to this point to uncover all this? I'm hoping people see that. And I'm hoping that before you throw out that word stretch, that you think first about how you could be standing in the way of helping people to wake up. Pan's pipes is where the word syringe came from. After he got his pipes from Syrinx, after she was turned into hollow water reeds, as you could read here. Now I'm going to link all this in the pinned comment. Some of you are probably shocked and blown away right now. Some of you are probably feeling a little bit like you feel a little bit bad because you've been accusing me of stretching all this. And look, I forgive you. But understand this is a journey, that I'm not just sitting here making all this stuff up for clicks and views. In fact, if you want to look at it in all honesty, the subject matter that we cover is rarely ever trending, rarely ever popular. It's a journey that we all go through, isn't it? If I really wanted to do popularity contests and get clicks and views, I'd be covering every single, artist every single new video that came out, new song, new this, new that. But instead, we follow the Holy Spirit here, don't we? So it is emerging after all this evidence that all of this is about the snake bite. It's all about the snake bite, and it's always been about the snake bite, hasn't it? Did you know that you get facial paralysis when you get bit by a snake? Why is it that all of these side effects of snake bites seem to overlap and match other side effects from other things? These overlapping symptoms. Hair loss also happens when you get a snake bite. Facial paralysis, neurological symptoms. Wow, let me go back into the chat, you guys. Now, if you want to look at those videos, they are these two videos, world's largest needle and second world's largest needle. They're right here on the channel. Take a look. Make sure you share them. This is very important for me. These are the kind of videos that wake people up. Because there's just too many coincidences, you guys. This whole Artemis cult. We're basically living in an Artemis cult, or Apollo cult, the sun worshiper. All these people worship the sun. That's what this has always been about. This is what I've been telling you guys. Sol Invictus, Artemis, Apollo. It always has been. It's from the founding of the country. It's the counterfeit Christ. And until we wake up to that and realize that both sides are involved, Republicans and Democrats. This isn't one side or the other, as I just demonstrated to you. They're working together, you guys. And I hope this proves it for you. Seeing the progression of how they've slowly moved us, president by president, towards their end. Started out with the Patriot Act, didn't it? Which included a clause in there about loss of rights so that they can impose certain things based on national security, which then became a spam-demic. We didn't know that at the time. It started with that. Then it went to national health care, which digitized everything under Obama. Supposed to be a different president, wasn't he? He was supposed to be a Democrat, but ended up progressing the agenda along. Digitized all the health care, and it was the perfect setup for Thump to then make the thing at warp speed, complete the circle, use the electronic records, use the Patriot Act to finish the deal. To finish the deal. All right, let me go into the chat here. We'll do a little Q&A for a while. Like I said, pretty heavy Friday, right, you guys? I wasn't planning on all this, but I kept researching after I woke up, and probably a third of the show that you just saw today happened in the last 2 hours. I haven't even had my coffee yet this morning. Whew, man, oh man. All right. Just reading your comments here, you guys. Okay. Wow, got some jokesters in here this morning. Go fishing, says Richard. Do you understand, though, that if I go do that and some of this information doesn't get out, that, you know what I mean? Like, I know I need balance in my life, but when the Holy Spirit's talking to me, the last thing I should do is stop listening and go fishing. You know, I need to finish the task that's been given to me. All right. Yes, Thump has the Apollo condo. Yes, 66th floor. 1966 is the Strong's number for Lucifer. Lucifer is Apollo. Remember the links between Lucifer and what was it? Was it Artemis? Lucifer is related to Apollo. Yes, fishing for men, absolutely. This fishing is a lot more important than fishing in a polluted river I went down to fish the other day. I was in the area, went to Naugatuck, to the Naugatuck River, and I looked into the river because they had stocked the river. And I'm like, why are they even stocking the river? There's more trash in this river than there are trout. Who's going to eat these trout? And so I was like, I'm over it. You know, I'm not going to go down there with diapers and bottles and cans and stuff floating down the river. Not going to do it. River cleanup day. Well, it'd take years to clean up that river. Those of you that live near the Naugatuck River, you'll know what I'm talking about. All these environmentalists trying to force us off of gas, and right in their backyards is a river full of trash. Literally. Literally. So, you know, the hypocrisy is glaring. Some days I wake up and I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? There's so much stuff that we could be doing for the environment rather than trying to force other people to do what they want them to do. Why aren't these environmentalists lobbying against companies that make plastic bottles? Why isn't that their focus? Or, you know, or cans. Instead, we attack each other, don't we? We make each other the scapegoat and the bad guy through politics, because that is how they control us. Right? Why don't they come up with some kind of decomposable plastic bottle? You know, these people are chemists. Oh, they can make things at warp speed, but they can't make a bottle that disintegrates after a week. You see what I'm saying here? You see what I'm saying? It's frustrating sometimes, you guys. It really is. It really is. What happened to cartons? Remember we used to have cartons? Why not go back to cartons and make a carton that disintegrates after a week? And is completely, you know, maybe it has fertilizer. No, not fertilizer, because then you'd be drinking it. But let's say it just breaks down like paper. Why can't they come up with that? You know, everybody talks about hemp. Why not make, you know, why not make a hemp carton? So that you can just grow it, make the carton, and it goes back. You don't even have to use a tree to make a carton. I mean, why is it people like us that we're being told we're stupid and we don't know what we're talking about? How is it that we're the ones coming up with all the best ideas? Did you know the plastic bottles are made out of oil products? Did you know that? In fact, mostly, you can look this up after the show, mostly oil is used for plastic. Very little of it, well, not very little, but it's like 20% of it maybe is used for oil in cars and gas to fuel cars. The rest of the oil is plastics. What are we doing? What are we doing? Well, we know what's happening. We know the enemy rules this world and he's the one doing all this. But to convince people of that and get people to wake up and think practically about what's happening in this world, instead of blaming each other on the right and on the left, we keep getting caught up with this, don't we? Keep getting tripped up. We keep getting tripped up. So, oil, plastics, and rubber, exactly. We live in a throwaway society. All right. I mean, this should tell you everything you need to know. When you go buy a bunch of plastic bottles, what do they call it? A sheet of plastic bottles. You get 30 something plastic bottles, right? And they charge you for the plastic. It's like an extra $1 or $2. So you buy the sheet for like $7 and you pay an extra $1 or $2 for the plastic. Well, guess what happens? The redemption value, people don't even redeem the plastic bottles anymore. You want to know why? because they're not even worth hardly anything for the effort it takes to recycle them. If they were so serious about cleaning up all the plastic in the world, wouldn't they put a really high redemption value on the plastic? Or wouldn't they say, okay, let's do this. Let's not charge the person, the consumer, for the redemption value, and then that gives them the incentive to then turn those bottles in to get some money for them, right? Right. Instead of giving something away for free, the government would actually be doing something for the environment, wouldn't they? Think of all the billions of dollars spent on these projects for the environment and all these rules, when all they have to do is say, okay, there is no fee for the plastic or the bottle when you buy it, and now you can turn that in, and basically you're getting $1 off that, that sleeve of plastic bottles. Duh. I mean, that's just one idea, you guys, that makes practical sense, that could immediately impact plastic bottles going into rivers and lakes and streams and the ocean. You would see an immediate 25 to 50% reduction of people throwing their plastic away, because it would be like throwing a dollar bill away, wouldn't it? So, why did they reduce the amount of money you get for plastic? All of the redemption values have fallen. That's why you don't see people recycling anymore. You can look all this up yourself. The redemption values used to be super high, and now they're super low. And so you don't see people walking around and gathering plastic and bottles anymore. It's very sad. So, don't blame us. We didn't do anything. We didn't make the plastic bottles and we didn't do all that. They did it. They're the ones giving it to us. So, Tanker says the Artemis symbol looks like an umbrella. I didn't know that. Interesting. So there you go. Another connection. All right. Yes. Crazy times. Anyway, you guys, I didn't want to make this show a downer. This wasn't meant to be a downer, because it is Friday, and I want you guys to have a, positive, hopeful weekend. There is a lot of hope, because all this means that it's all coming to an end, doesn't it? It's all coming to an end. And that's good news for all of us who are believers, who believe in the Son of God, and believe that there is redemption. Interesting, we're talking about redemption, right? So, good news for us, because we're just watching the world devolve into chaos, and we know why it's devolving into chaos. So, hang tight. We'll get through all this. I love you guys. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Take care and be safe.